I think it's stupid too that they had to like use like it was an app like you used your phone, but then in the universe the minifigures were also using their phone. Like it was just a
Yeah.
little
Too
too
on the
on the
nose.
nose for me
Yeah.
because like it's like okay, yeah, we know we get it, but like is that I don't want to use the word realistic, but like do like am I ghost hunt like am I recording this or am I ghost hunting? You know what I mean? Like I don't
Yeah.
know.
They're
I
using the radio waves on your telephone, Grant.
is that what it
Grant.
is it 5G?
Hello, bricks, chicks, and minifigures. You are listening to AFOLs Welcome, where we talk about all things Lego from the perspective of two adult collectors. We are your co-hosts, West,
And Grinch.
and today we're going to be talking about Hidden Side. But before we get started with that, I just wanted to re-announce our kind of build up to May 4th and explain why we did episode 1 last week. This week we're changing gears with Hidden Side. Next week I believe we're tackling episode 2. Is that correct, Grinch?
Correct.
And so we're going to be kind of doing the prequel trilogy up until May 4th, and then we're going to give you guys a special May 4th promo episode. And so that's kind of what to expect over the next few weeks.
Exciting Lego news.
Next, let's talk about some exciting Lego news. Grinch, what did you see this week in Lego news that stood out?
Well, personally, I am very excited about the kind of additional information we got on Baradur. We got some minifigure information. Looks like, according to rumors, right, none of this is confirmed as of today. 5,471 pieces, price tag of $460. That's going to be big. I mean, Tower of Orthanc was like 2,000 something pieces. So this, scale's weird with Lego because like the more pieces, the more detailed too. So it's not going to be, twice as the size necessarily, but it'll be, there's probably going to be a lot more like rock work, and then the built up tower, the tower itself will probably be more detailed, but I imagine it'll be, maybe 20 or 30% larger, than that Tower of War thing, just with a ton more detail.
What do you think is the over-under that there's a play feature where Frodo gets hidden by a rock?
I mean, it's not necessarily this scene. I'd give it 50-50.
But it is definitely adjacent.
It is.
I mean, it's in front of Bard.
It's in front of the Black Gate when it happens.
Yeah.
And, the Black Gate set that they had was based off Return of the King, not the Two Towers when that happened. So there better be a movable eye at the top, right? Like that's there needs to be the eye. Baradur, you're thinking of oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name of that other tower. But yeah, the one that he gets captured in.
No, but I was thinking of the Black Gate. So for some reason I was thinking they were reissuing, because the Black Gate had the towers on it too.
Right.
So I was thinking of that. But right, the Tower of Baradur is where Saruman. Yeah, so what do you think, buildable eye? Or is it going to be more, is it going to be intricate? Or do you think it'll be more like a plate with some really cool printing on it? Like a trans orange plate with some cool printing?
Cirith Ungol was the tower that he gets captured at after he gets poisoned by Shelob. I think it, with the piece count, they could go either way. It could just be a trans orange disc with some printing on it, and then maybe another 2x2 in the middle of it, right, to kind of give it some more detail. And then they've got something coming out of the back that attaches it. I think that's how I would probably personally do it if I was Lego, because you could get so much more of the eye printing on there, right? And then you could kind of give some of the kind of frilly edges to make the edge look less defined. Versus, Lego is just such hard edges.
The brick built in Elrond, the Counts of Elrond, was great though.
Yeah, it was okay. I mean, it was a very like, it was a light representation of it, right? It was just a couple of slopes and then So it would definitely not be anywhere near good enough for actual Barad-dûr, right? Because that's like a hidden Easter egg that like you pick up the council and move in Rivendell, and then it's there. And then
Yeah,
in the original one, it was actually a sticker.
in the
But
original.
because there was two Rivendell sets.
Right, the small one?
Yeah, the tiny one. There's a sticker that goes under it, so when Gimli hits the ring, it's a little play feature. You slide it out, and it shows the little eye real quick.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, yeah, it's a sticker though. Um,
Neat.
the thing I'm most excited about is Sauron minifigure here. Like that's just I made another top 10 list of missing minifigures, and Sauron was like up there as like number one, or maybe it was number two. But certainly like awesome minifigure. There's going to be another Mouth of Sauron, which I'm a little bit less excited about. I would have
Yeah.
much rather seen like the Witch King here, because
I
we
think
did
I
get
heard,
a Witch King minifigure in the Hobbit sets, but not one that was Lord of the Rings based. So I'd have much rather seen that than just a redo of a Mouth of Sauron minifigure.
I heard Brick built Flying Nazgul.
Oh, cool.
So
Yeah, that'd be cool too.
a rumor I saw. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but it does. Some of those brick built like dragons. I know the Flying Nazgul ring wraiths are not technically dragons, but
I think as
uh,
long as it is done well to give it scale,
yeah,
you can have it kind of attached to the side of it, and that versus like the Dungeons and Dragons sets where like the dragon is the same size as the tower. That would kind of annoy me, especially if they
yeah,
like more of like Avengers Tower and the those whale things. I forget the Chitauri whale thing. You know how that was
yeah.
like smaller, kind of midi scale to like match more of the actual scale. That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, well, and I think there's a lot of flexibility on the size too for the ring wraith. I mean, they're larger, but they're not huge, right? And so, yeah, I think that would be interesting. I'm trying to think of some other fun stuff. Maybe a play feature with the ring and like some lava at the bottom of it or something. I know the tower and Mount Doom aren't co-located, but
Yeah,
like, you know, it's not like they're ever gonna make a Mount Doom set. So like, uh,
they're not gonna make like a 6,000 piece Mount Doom just a pile of bricks.
yeah, yeah,
It'll have a light brick though, so
there you go. Exactly, a few of them. But so speak.
I don't think they'll ever do this, but Golem is rumored to come in this, right? Frodo, Sam, Golem, Nazgul, a couple orcs, and then a couple brown orcs, a couple green orcs. But this is, famously the area where that Golem was tortured. I mean, that would just be terrible. But like,
Yeah,
I mean, they put a dungeon in Isengard when they did the Tower of Orthanc. Like, I don't know. I feel like they'd probably just steer clear of that. Not that I necessarily want to see it in this set. It just the inclusion of Golem made me think of that.
I think Lego's ethics probably would keep them from committing to that full time. But I like the.
I
It's a
really
very
hope they don't, because what's going to happen is if they do, they'll end up canceling the set or something,
yeah.
and that would just be a travesty.
But with Frodo, Gollum, and Sam, I do think there's probably. I would bet that there's probably going to be a Mount Doom thing.
There'll probably
You
be
know,
like
like
an armory, like where he like and you can have Sauron like making the One Ring there or something.
yeah.
Yeah,
And dear listener, I want to apologize. I have my washing machine going in my basement right now, which is probably the what you're hearing in the background.
can't hear it
So,
at all.
oh well, then there we go. Easy.
So disregard.
Okay, let's press. Star Wars images were officially unveiled, which was exciting. We talked about them last week, but they're now actually on Lego Shop at Home for the Sith Interceptor and the Grogu's Escape. Of the two sets, I'm both not a huge fan of Mandalorian Season 3 or Mandalorian in general, and so that one doesn't really speak to me. But the Sith infiltrator looks pretty cool. So um, I don't know. I think of all of the Sith Darth Maul sets to pick up, this one's not bad. It also comes with Saw Gerrera, which as a Rogue One completist, I'll probably need to go pick up. So we'll see.
It's like they
But
know what they're doing with these things.
it is. It is. What did you think, Grinch? Any thoughts on those official images?
No, it kind of looks standard Star Wars fare these days. I think the Sith
Yeah.
Infiltrator looks like it's a little bit maybe smaller of a scale than we've seen with Sith Infiltrators, but I also think it looks better. And
Yeah.
probably I think the cockpit is really, really good on it, and I think the wings are really good on it too. We talked a lot
Yeah.
about the Sith Infiltrator last week, so like fresh in my mind. They had those kind of like big, kind of clawed, curved wings on them before, and this is just more brick built all around.
Yeah.
So I think it definitely looks better. Minifigure selection is exactly what you'd expect. Darth Maul, Qui-Gon, young
It's
Anakin.
it's interesting to see different versions of starships like in the Star Wars universe as they progress, and you can see where like with the Sith Infiltrator, where they were sort of trying to say like, hey, this kind of looks like a TIE fighter, doesn't it? And it's both extremely annoying and interesting. And so
It's kind of like unoriginally original.
well, it's just especially because the prequels were done after the
Yeah.
original trilogy, you see them sort of like
Like with the V
even
wings at the end of episode 3 when they're like
they
making the
sound like
TIE
that.
fighter sound. Yeah.
They just it's like they kind of do something and then it's like George Lucas or Dave Filoni like looks back at you and it kind of goes like, see what I did there? And you're like, yeah, I saw, like, I got it, George. Like, they're related. Cool. So I think it's really frustrating to see that sometimes. But what I guess I was getting at to your point about scale is the Sith Infiltrators never really, we see it like flying and then we see it landing in Tatooine and that's like about it.
Mhm.
It's definitely one of for a ship that was shown very little in Star Wars, it gets a lot of attention from Lego sets, which is kind of interesting. I mean, it looks badass, so I get it. But it definitely it's very underutilized. But there's a few that would be a fun Lego list to create of like Lego Star Wars sets that have like little to no screen time.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
um,
I just think of like all the Star Wars Episode 1 ships that they have, right? Like
yeah, yep,
I mean, it's the Sith Infiltrator, Pod Racers, and it's funny though. Like I would have much rather seen more of those Naboo little speeders with the mounted gun. Like, give me a couple of those, right? Give me, we got a Gungan Sun, but give me the big, Trade Federation troop those big brown transporters, or I forget what they're called. I'm just not been a Star Wars fanatic for a while. Um, there are a lot more other ships, but I think this one's like fits that perfect scale of Lego and like a villain kind of easy ship to maybe make that's not like this ginormous scale ship that they would never make because it's just too big because they couldn't do it right. Yeah. So I think that's where this one just fits that perfect niche for like Lego ship design. And yeah, I mean, we talked about last week. I'd rather see some play sets here than just another, the 7th infiltrator that we got, right?
But boy, does Little Annie and Qui-Gon and Darth Maul, they look great in this set.
Yep.
So, like,
So did you see the April Fool's joke from Lego with the minion?
I did. So why don't you fill in our listeners on what Lego did?
So they had for April Fools, Lego will oftentimes do some sort of joke post or whatever. So they announced that they were going to launch a super-sized set beginning with the Big Tim the Minion. He was going to have 102,213 pieces. He'd stand at 2.5 meters tall. For my American friends, that's 8 feet tall. And it just says the box is also equally supersized. I saw somewhere that like the directions would weigh like 100 pounds, and then like the images that they have of like like the marketing kind of images, the lifestyle images that they put with it had like somebody with the direction book that was like a foot tall. And It's just like you look at it and you're like, oh, they have the box. Why are they building this on the box? And then you're like, oh, those are the instructions. And then it's just them on a table with like 100,000 just yellow 2x4 bricks. So pretty funny joke from Lego. Kind of, Lego, I think, is kind of making fun of themselves here a little bit too, right? Because like there's been a lot of conversation about how Lego sets are getting bigger, about how they just keep coming out with bigger and bigger Lego sets. And I think this is them just kind of poking fun of themselves a little bit.
You know, uh, of all of the April Fool's jokes that kind of were put out this year, Lego definitely does it right, and they usually do. So it's a great joke, and it got a chuckle out of me on April Fool's. So I was very happy to see that. But
Well,
Grinch, anything else for
I don't
news
have
this
anything
week?
else. Why don't we move to the main topic?
Okay,
Today's topic.
but so let's talk about this. First, we're going to talk about Lego Hidden Side. And what I'm going to attempt to do is to give you a brief dissertation on why I think it's underrated as a theme, and some of its pros, and really kind of what's exciting about it. And then we'll kind of get into the rest of the flow of our episode. But that's where I wanted to start. So let's talk about Lego Hidden Side. This is a theme that came out in 2020. It was an original Lego theme, and it starred a group of teenagers as they were trying to hunt ghosts around their town. And why the set, I think, or the series, it just is really unique, is that we hadn't gotten like a haunted Monster Hunter set in a while. And so this was a newer thing for Lego. And you can see a lot of attention being put into and detail being put into the set. We're going to talk about some of the drawbacks from that. But some of the things that just really stood out to me were minifigure selection. Right? We had some really great minifigures in this set. Not only did we have some great minifigures from the main characters who were these teenagers, wearing like Letterman's jackets and, ripped up jeans and just kind of cool attire for Lego minifigures. But all of the sub minifigures also looked great. You had a whole like group of bikers. There were the chefs from the shrimp shack. You had custodians from the school, mechanics. Some of my favorite minifigures from this series were the two shrimp boat workers in their yellow kind of boating attire. And so there was just like a lot of attention placed there. There was also some attention placed in animals, right? We got this albino alligator, which was kind of cool. We had Spencer the ghost dog, who was dual molded, clear and white. And so he kind of looked like this apparition just like floating through the sky. So there was a lot of fun with that. And then the theme itself, I think some of the criticism has been that it felt like it was a little all over the place, but I thought it actually was really well thought through. It appears to be set somewhere in the United States, right? Not only by like the vehicle choice, but the general theme of like high school and stuff like that. But specifically somewhere in the Northeast. And why this is important is that the Northeast United States and monsters as a theme or a co-theme is something that kind of is within the American cultural zeitgeist. So not only do you have like Salem, Massachusetts, right? Home of the Salem witch trials. So there's already kind of a theme there of the hauntedness. But you also have one of our most prolific writers in the United States, Stephen King, who it lives in the Northeast and bases a lot of his stories in the Northeast as well. And so when you look at the theme and you start to kind of pull the larger picture together, it just, for me, it really stood out as like, you have this cool sort of Americana theme with the vehicle builds and the setting, and it's all kind of based in the American Northeast. where you have a rich history of hauntedness occurring. Now, I don't know if Hidden Side did the best job of pushing that, but that's what I got out of it. That's why I think Hidden Side's really fun. Grinch, I want to open it up. You've been patient listening to me kind of ramble on about Hidden Side. So, what are your thoughts when you see Hidden Side, and what does it sort of mean to you?
I mean, if their intention was Northeast Americana, then I lost that. Because, I mean, they have like the wrecked shrimp boat, which like screams like Louisiana, and then like the graveyard mystery. Like New Orleans is famous for just having graveyards like everywhere all through that city. So like just with those two sets coming out, that screams kind of like Southern voodoo or hoodoo to me versus Northeast. But I think maybe that's where some of the criticism is from, of like it feels a little bit all over the place and maybe a little bit of a lack of direction. Because then again, there's the shrimp shack attack, and like it sure, the Northeast is famous for like lobster, right, and seafood. Cape Cod, right, Massachusetts. But like when I hear like shrimp shack attack and it's this little kind of dinery thing, to me that feels very bayou, right? Especially when there was alligators in the sets too. Like an alligator figure was really cool. Like the kind of, it was almost like albino, right? Like a tan alligator with like a red eye, but like that just screams Florida Everglades, southern United States to me.
Actually, for the listener,
there it is, right there. So I love the red eye. I think it's just a cool piece. I have one too. I think you actually gave it to me, and so like I love that aspect of it. But it doesn't. If the intent was Northeast, and I certainly see what you're saying with like the Newberry High School, right? Because that looks like a classic kind of old school high school. But it just does feel a little all over the place, and that's okay. It doesn't have to, right? It doesn't. I think that's just maybe why people might not have resonated with it.
I agree. So I think you're hitting the nail on the head here, right? And I called it a dissertation. That was a very strong and maybe overly complimentary word for my ramble earlier.
I believe the word would be rant.
That's fair.
A tangent, if you would.
Yeah. Here's the deal. I think you're exactly right. There's definitely misses. And so I'm probably being over complimentary to what I think Hidden Side could have been, right? Because you take the shrimp boat and you call it a lobster boat. You take the shrimp shack, you call it a lobster shack, right? Like there's some very easy changes that could have been made to this theme. Lobsters are Lego pieces. Like that's not even like a hard change. Mm-hmm. And you have a more northeastern setting. Interestingly, in the Northeast, there are 3 Newberries. There's one in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. And so if you look at kind of where, and the Newberry, Massachusetts is actually pretty close to Salem, interestingly enough. If you look at kind of where, again, everything's located, there isn't like a clear cohesiveness amongst the sets, right? So you have a bus, you have a shrimp shack, you have a school, you have a train station, you have like all of these little features. And then in the next series, there's like a subway station, which is kind of like, okay, traditionally subways are going to be found
super in Northeast in the United States. Yeah.
So like, there's a subway in Chicago, there's a subway in DC and
New York, Philly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one in Boston, there's one in New York. Like so are we in a city or are we in like a, more of a suburban town? So like, I totally get that. And I think that that's absolutely a fair critique of the series, that it sort of felt close, but not quite, because I think that's a really interesting point that you brought up, that the shrimp series of sets kind of feel like more of a Bayou than they do.
And they could have, if their intent was to be more of like northeast
Yeah,
focused, that was certainly lost to at least me. I would have needed some sort of additional information to have determined that. But they could have done, a wave of, hey, northeast, right, and then just maybe looked into more of like, you know, this is U.S. based for sure, so they could have looked into more of like U.S. based like horror lore, right? And they could have done a Northeast series for series one, and then the next wave could have been, Southern Bayou, right?
I'm gonna pause this conversation because I want to pick that up later because
Okay,
that is exactly what I'm thinking, dude. Just right
all
on the
right.
money.
I think
Um,
for me, this is like there's frustration with this series and
yeah,
and theme because I just remember they did all these promo sets for it, and I didn't like buy stuff just to get the promo set. It was more of a coincidence of like they had it going on and I got it. And I remember being like, oh, let me try the app. Let me, this whole thing was centered around, and we haven't even said it yet because it was that underwhelming. The whole purpose of these sets was to take your everyday burger bar or juice bar in this case, or a boat, a shrimp boat, and then you turn it into this haunted experience. And there's a virtual reality app that you can, or sorry, augmented reality app that you can engage with your set and capture ghost with, right? But
yeah.
they gave out these promo sets and you couldn't use the app with the promo sets. So the idea was to like get the promo sets into people's hands and to be like, oh yeah, let's get some exposure to the theme. That's why Lego does those, right? Is to like give people exposure to the theme and be like, oh, this was pretty cool. Like, look, this juice bar transforms. The whole selling point of this was the app. And you couldn't
Yeah.
even engage with the app on the free promo set. So like, what the heck? So that's
No,
that's just a miss to me. And the other miss is the box art. When you look at the box arts, you just compared to the Lego set next to it. If you're sitting there and you're like, aha, Star Wars Sith Infiltrator, cool. Or if you're looking over here and you're like, I don't know what the heck this is. And I distinctly remember the box art because the other sets that also came out at this time, which flopped ironically as well, was Overwatch. Was like right around this 2019, 2020. And to me, Overwatch had some of the cleanest box art we have ever seen from Lego. It just like I don't know what it was about that box art, but like it had kind of this like flat matte finish on it, and like the
yeah.
sets themselves weren't glossy. So like that had always piqued my eye of like, wow, this is some like quality kind of pristine finished box art, and like I wish they went that direction with the box art for the adult sets and not just the black background. But yeah,
But you're
both of those
suggesting,
flopped. Both of those flopped. So like is the box art really a culprit here? I don't know. I just remember sitting there like being like, I mean, I knew what it was, but like just looking at the box art on the shelf, I was just like, I don't know what I'm getting with this set. And even when you turned it over, it was like there's a line going through it showing the haunted side and the non-haunted side, but then there was just so much going on. And I'll overlay some images of box arts to this part of the conversation. So if you're enjoying on YouTube, you can check it out and see what I'm talking about, because obviously that's more visual. And if you're enjoying on other platforms, give us a follow, leave us a review, number one. But number two, you can hop over to YouTube, AFOLs Welcome, and just check out the box art.
so let's back up real quick because I do want to talk on the box art too. Do you have any hidden side sets other than the promos? Like, did you
Um,
purchase any?
no, I never wanted to. I was
Okay.
I was just the only one I almost got was the one with Slender Man because my wife, well, I guess unofficial Lego Slender Man, because my wife loves Slender Man. Um, and it was a kind of a good price apart set. I just kind of never felt inclined to, and it looks like I could actually probably go buy it for the same price right now as it was when it was
So let's
on shelves.
real quick. So I guess I'll share my set history. I did buy a few of them. I bought two of the shrimp boats. I bought, which is why we both have the alligator. I bought the Slender Man set, and I bought the Ghost Train set. And I definitely enjoyed all of them. This is where I think again the theme kind of gets a little both underwhelming and overwhelming at the same. Like it's exciting, but also underwhelming at the same time. this is a theme that brought us Lego Slender Man. Like, to say that statement out loud just sounds so weird. And yet you're just like,
And for those that don't understand, we're talking about the Phantom Fire Truck 3000. Came with a really kind of tall, black, slender, ghostly figure,
yes.
buildable
And it
figure.
strongly, I mean, I think they even called him Slender something, did they not? If I remember correctly.
It doesn't say on the box, yeah.
I think it strongly insinuated that that's who that was. I mean, without a doubt, which plays into your comment too about American horror like lore and history. And so I want to wait and chat about that.
His name
But
was Neymar Reem, so
yeah,
I'm not really getting.
Slender Man.
Yeah,
I think we all maybe called him Slender Man.
I think the community just called him Slender Man.
That's probably what happened.
He's a hooded shadow walker. Oh, sorry, he's called the Shadow Walker.
But you know what was really great with all these sets was just some of the detail that was like put into that. So you got this really cool looking fire truck. I have it mostly assembled on my countertop. I'm looking at it right now. What was really cool about it was like, when have we ever had a fire truck that looked like that in Lego? You know what I mean? And this is a fire truck that looks like a proper American, like, big pump truck. And it was so unique to see. And then with the train station, I wasn't a huge fan of the train itself. Like, it didn't really speak to me. But it did.
You didn't like a train with demon wings?
It was a wonderful set for pieces and the characters, the people in the train, you know, outfits and stuff. And any piece where we do get kind of a fun little train like that is really fun. It included that new derailleur piece, or re-railer piece, if you will, for the train tracks, which is a really handy piece. And then it had like a really nice build for the train station itself. It was very basic, but compared to what we get in like the Lego City train builds, it was a pretty solid train station. So I thought that was a lot of fun. And I still kind of want to go pick up the Shrimp Shack and bus. So I haven't quite made my mind up about that yet. But
Well, according to Brickset, the bus is $10 off retail still. 4 years later, just saying.
But so let's talk more about the theme itself. History-wise, Grinch, you already talked about this a little bit. It came out in 2019 or 2020. It had 3 waves. In terms of some details itself, right? Each set kind of featured a main character, a series of main characters, and then some side characters who would ultimately get haunted. And so there's a ton of minifigures in these sets. The highest I see is 8, but usually they were sitting around like 3 or 4. There was a few with 6. And so this was a great series if you wanted like just random minifigures. In terms of prices, pretty standard. A lot of them in kind of the mid 50s. They did have some more expensive sets. The most expensive being both Newberry High School, and then I believe the Castle was the kind of most expensive on the back end for. Yeah, that one was $100. The Newberry High School was $130. So for those being your most expensive sets in the range, that's not a bad price point. But everything else was kind of somewhere in the mid, 50s, 40s for sets. Price per piece was pretty solid, averaging somewhere around like $10 to $11 price per piece. And then in total numbers of sets, there were a series of foil packs that were released, but we're looking at 32 total sets in the Hidden Side theme. So,
A lot of those were not a lot of them, but that number is being inflated by there was like 8 foil packs, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Which are the magazine packs. They're not available in the US for anybody who's listening and is like, what are those?
Yeah. So and they are, I mean, really nothing special. There's some minifigures in there. The worker minifigure is going for $7 on Brick Economy right now. For some reason, the rest are kind of floating somewhere around the 3s and the 2s. And I don't have any great value or ideas about appreciation because I don't know how much those cost when you bought them in the magazine. So
I don't actually know how much those magazines cost. Yeah, I always just assumed they were like $3 or something because it's a
yeah.
magazine.
So and if you assume they're like €3 or €4 for a magazine, then your value on these figures is actually dropping. In terms of appreciation, this is a mixed bag. This theme, it's pretty steady and pretty underwhelming. The highest sets that are appreciating are the Mystery Castle, which has seen about 100% increase in value, retailing today for $200 new. And then the next best set is an underwhelming El Fuego stunt cannon, which retailed for $5 and is now retailing for $9 for some reason, and has an 85% appreciation or rate of appreciation. So I don't
What?
know.
This is the one? Oh, I guess it's
Yes,
because it was a gift with purchase.
maybe. I don't know. So I guess for anyone who's trying to complete, but everything else is like there's a 58% with the prison. Um, Everything else is kind of holding steady at like really underwhelming figures for Lego. I mean, 15%, 25%. Some are negative. The El Fuego stun truck is down 7%, so it's cheaper to buy it today than it was. The drag racer down 29%. So, the theme isn't aging gracefully with respect to Lego and value. So that's fair. Like I said, I think there's a lot of people who got frustrated with this theme. Grinch, I know you voiced some of those frustrations earlier, but let's kind of talk about those. And
I
I,
mean, I
I
mean, the app didn't work first and foremost. Like it was very
yeah,
buggy, and like apps are also. I'm surprised these don't have a worse part to price ratio because apps are expensive to maintain, right, and to develop. And I would assume they would have put some of that cost into these sets, but
like scared the
they
cost.
they price these very competitively. I mean, I'm looking at these and like
Yeah,
it's pretty rare to see something over 10 cents per part. And if I mean, I know we've talked about that ratio, but even like the Lighthouse of Darkness, which has quote unquote a lot of big pieces in it because it's got some big kind of pre-made rock pieces, it's got some larger panels type pieces. Even that set was still under 10 cents per part. The
yeah.
roller coaster set was literally at 10 cents per part, and those are typically way worse as far as price goes. So like they priced these very competitively despite
Yeah.
having to pay for this app. So um, I did
So I
want to.
think there's a story here, though, right? So, Grinch, what did you have next to share, and then I'll kind of talk through some of the elephants in the room because
Go
there's
ahead.
definitely.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Talk about the elephants.
So we talked about packaging already, right? And you mentioned it. The packaging was really poor. Again, as someone who bought the sets, like you didn't really see on the front of it what was going on. It was done in this weird animated style. So, like for example, with the ghost train, it featured the train on the front, kind of in a half haunted fashion. The mouth or the front of the train opened up to create a mouth, and then there were like wings on the side, and so like it was kind of done in this like more cartoony design. And it was done in the palette too for colors was very like blue and yellow and um, muted. They weren't like warm and inviting colors. They were kind of more darker and colder colors. And so,
They were very natural colored sets. There's a lot of sand green, a lot of brown, a lot of dark blue, a lot of dark tan, like kind of darker, natural, and then also natural. But then they did a good job, I think, of adding accent colors within the sets to make them pop. Because the other aspect was they had the glow
yeah,
in the dark pieces for the kind of ghost transformation. But like the
yeah,
minifigures are very like when you look at the minifigures, those are very vibrant.
yeah,
The train, for example, might be kind of dark red, but then they've got like this kind of medium azure blaster, ghost blaster on the top of it, and ghost transformer, and
mhm,
they used I kind of like the color palette here. I think is where I'm going actually, where they
No,
did have a
yeah,
very muted color palette, but then there's these accents of,
that
it's
really
it's, it's
stands.
not it's the opposite of Friends, where it's like you have a magenta school and you're like, oh, I've never seen a magenta school in my life. This had a brick colored school, and then they had the color pop kind of within it and around it versus just making the thing pop with color.
Yeah, it definitely had some unique color usage, but again, right, like not captured on the box, and so I think it was a real missed opportunity to sell the story. I think the box art was really trying to highlight the augmented reality side of the whole thing. But like you mentioned, because the promos and the app release didn't quite coincide well enough, or that they weren't complementary, right?
So
It,
so so I'm in sales and customer development, and
yeah,
in a company that services retail. And imagine this: they had a normal box art, but then on the shelf it said download the app and check out the hidden side of Lego sets. And then you take the app and then you use the augmented reality to look at the box art. And this is totally doable. This you could totally do this. It's not like this technology doesn't
yeah,
exist. And then the box art transforms and ghosts start flying out of it. And in like, first of all, you'd be able to capture everybody's 3P data because they download the app just to look at the set. So like win-win, right? Cool. You can retarget people now. Number two, you get to engage with this box in a way that like makes you excited of like, okay, if this is how much fun it is to just engage with this box, it would be really cool to like do this with this set. And you could just
yeah,
start, and then you could see kind of the hidden side of the set just by. I think that would have been a much cleaner experience. You would have had to
Or-
download an app. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah. But they're wanting you to do that anyways within the theme. So like
right.
you're getting someone to download it before they've even bought the set, which already is kind of bringing things into play. It also allows you to kind of get a figure for customer engagement with the theme, right?
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, not every impression of someone using the app correlates to a sale, but they do have some figures that they would probably be able to say, like, hey, we know how many sets we're selling, we know how many impressions the app is giving, and then they can kind of,
Yeah. Or like this IP address engaged with the Newberry High School set, and then all of a
Mhm.
sudden you feed them an ad for the Newberry High School set because they never purchased it, and then they're like, they get home, they're like, actually, I should have got that set. Let me go.
Yeah,
You'd have a
absolutely.
much higher conversion rate on that ad.
So I think there's a few. So let's talk about AR, but let's talk about to a point that you brought up, and I don't know how intentional it was, right? But like it's in the name, hidden side. So
Yeah,
why
it
not
was it
have
was
this?
intentional.
So
Just
let's
for
break
the
that down
record.
for a little bit though, because I think we're both kind of on the same page here. You have a very not bland box art, but like regular, like show the set, right? In Legos rendered digital image, and then you bring up the phone and it shows you the hidden side of the set. Like it literally takes the name and builds on it in a way that just a picture on the box doesn't. And I think that is really key. So this was a series, you and I have talked about this before. Lego loves their gimmicks. They're all about gimmicks. And as two collectors who've collected Lego for a few decades now and have been fans of Lego for a few decades now, we've seen kind of the gimmicks come and go in waves, right? Between Throwbots and Bionicles and those weird disc rider things, there were like throwing
Robo
gimmicks.
Riders,
There was remember the little clicker that like flipped the Spider-Man gimmick, the figure, but then they said don't use it because it like breaks
because it breaks their legs. Yeah,
um
the super jumper.
yeah, there's all sorts of goofy stuff, like the stuff in City with the nets a few years ago, and like the blaster water cannons and stud shooters and stuff. Like Lego will pick a gimmick. I mean, I have a full case full of stud shooters in here somewhere, and they just love to kind of come back to that and incorporate it in ways that I think a lot of us adult fans are sort of like, okay, we get it, but this was kind of their series 2 of augmented reality, right? So it was video, and then which was supposed to
Video was after this.
Lego TikTok.
Yeah.
Okay, so but around the same time,
Yeah.
right? And then there's this one which is augmented reality, and this was about the time augmented reality was sort of, I think, at its peak saturation in the larger consumer market. Because if you listen to people in 2019 and in 2018, like, they were talking about augmented reality changing everything. And here we are in 2024, and certainly there were historical events that could have just derailed that for sure, right? Anything pre 2020 feels like it was on a different trajectory in some
Hmm.
cases, things post 2020. But for, I think, hopefully obvious reasons to the listener. But it definitely feels like um, Lego assumed augmented reality, or kind of bet that it would be bigger than it actually was. And when you did use the game, you effectively took your set, you put it into the augmented reality, and it provided like a larger backdrop, which I guess is neat. I don't know how necessary that is. And then there were like ghosts that would appear, and you would just like click them until they died, and then you got points. And I think in terms of a full product, that
The
doesn't
game was a one and done. There was
telling.
no, yeah, there was no reason to it was just kind of, you did it. You bought one set just to try it, and then you never did the game again. And then the
Yeah,
sets
like,
weren't good enough on their own to like warrant you to buy more sets.
yeah. So like I think that was certainly a problem. The last kind of piece I want to talk through here is the narrative arc. So I want to go back to the point that you made about like American lore. I do want to critique the series for a second and say it's not really clear why we should care about the main characters. They were never very compelling. They kind of had this like grungy, modern, postmodern, attire and aesthetic with their cell phones, kind of very Gen Z. Um, that I think was maybe a little off-putting. And then,
The characters felt very LA too, like West Coast. Like the two
yeah,
main characters did. And then you had
come
like this, yeah.
with a theme that doesn't really have like a clear story other than what was in the app, but the app never really expanded upon the story at all. It really kind of, I could totally understand why this didn't work out the way I think Lego wanted it to, which is a shame because I I always applaud, and you and I have talked about this, applaud Lego for trying new things. And Lego right now makes a lot of money on licensed themes. And it's, I wouldn't say rare, but the themes that are Lego created that do well, City, Friends, Ninjago, they're powerhouses. There's not a lot of like open in space for other themes that are unique. And so I think this was a really cool, unique theme that had, just like I said, a lot of potential that just didn't quite hit the mark. And so um, I would like to suggest a few things. I loved your box art idea. I'd like to suggest a few changes to the narrative arc and augmented reality to make this better. And let's start with the game real quick, the augmented reality game. If it took like your tabletop, for example, and built out more of a 3D world where you could move in it and engage with like trees and boulders, and it created more of like a contained environment. Didn't have to be huge. And then the set was kind of the centerpiece of that. And maybe the story is like you get called in to investigate the ghost, and so it puts you kind of close to the set or the location, and you have to find your way over there and explore, and there's like traps and stuff, and ghosts pop out, and then you get to the main area. I think with some better maybe narrative storytelling, the theme or the app itself could have been more interesting, right? Where you're like engaging with the location a little bit more. What about the shrimp shack is important here, or something like that. So just a little more fleshed out ultimately, I think would have made more sense. And then with the narrative arc, I think that would have complemented the idea of like the students getting called in to go and see this, right? They definitely kind of, if they had like a set with a headquarters, that could have told the story a little bit better. You know, like it could have been like a basement or like a treehouse where they're like catching ghosts. And I think they kind of did that a little bit. I think there was JB's lab was a set, but it never really felt like it was connected like that. So, any thoughts on kind of the ideas I shared?
I just think Lego struggled with this idea for a while now. I mean, ironically, they did Monster Fighters and 10 years ago now, which those sets are super collectible now, but that was more the traditional monster, werewolf, mad scientist, Swamp Thing, right? Vampire, Dracula, that kind of universal monster verse, if you would, Frankenstein, and like those sets are crazy collectible now, but they did
Yeah.
not sell well originally. I mean, some of those sets were on the market for 6 months, right, or just a year, 4 months. I'm looking at like they didn't sell well. Um, these sets did not sell well. The Scooby Doo sets that they even came out with in 2016, those are also super, or I guess that was 2015, sorry. Those were also super collectible, but I don't know if Lego just lost the license with that one, but like, again, super collectible now, but that's a license. And so you do have people that missed it and have come into the theme or to the community sense. And so I just think in general,
Yeah.
Lego has struggled with this kind of monster related
Why
IP.
why do you think that is?
I just I think it's a story as old as time in a lot of cases of, like you versus the swamp man. And
Yeah.
it's one that's been told a million times. So unless you do something truly compelling, it's just gonna be, a fairy tale almost. And
Here's where I want to talk about the narrative arc piece a little bit more. And to build off of your idea of like maybe adjusting the series a little bit and digging into like folklore a little more, right? Could you imagine a hidden side where they're chasing down like a Sasquatch
sure.
or a Mothman or like we have Slender Man, like let's you know um uh other a swamp, a creature from the Black Lagoon kind of situation. I think you could see the characters, and you don't have to call him like a Sasquatch, you don't have to call him Mothman, but you could. I think if there was maybe like a little more acknowledgement of like the Americana that has clearly fed the theme, and you just sort of play into that a little bit. I don't know. I feel like it could have been a totally different story. You know what I mean? And I'm just it's an interesting. I feel like again, I go back to this. I feel like this series had so much potential, and I just feel like it just was sort of half baked, unfortunately. But
Yeah, I think it's stupid too that they had to like use like it was an app like you used your phone, but then in the universe the minifigures were also using their phone. Like it was just a
yeah,
little
too
too
on the
on the
nose.
nose for me
Yeah,
because like it's like okay, yeah, we know we get it, but like is that I don't want to use the word realistic, but like do like am I ghost hunt like am I recording this or am I ghost hunting? You know what I mean? Like I don't
yeah.
know.
They're
I
using the radio waves on your telephone,
is that what it
Grant.
if is it 5G?
Yeah,
Um
yeah,
I think too like interestingly enough the CMF monsters that they did, I think it's series 14 that they came out with 1 October that was like all monster CMFs.
yeah.
Even when I collected CMFs 3 years ago, 4 years ago, even that series was on it was on the cheaper kind of, it was the lower quartile of cheapness
Hmm.
of series. So I just don't think there's that much resignation or recognition. Sorry, not
Yeah,
resignation. I don't think there's that much recognition of like the youth today and some of these old monster tales, right? I mean, these are like the monster tales that like my grandparents listen to. I think if they, I think they need to find even Scooby Doo is an old IP. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a beloved IP, but like it's a pretty old IP, and I don't know if it's just because like
It's not even our
horror
generation.
and scary. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's a Gen X / Boomer thing, right? I mean, it really is. It's not a millennial. I mean, I watched Scooby Doo as a kid. Don't get me wrong. I guess the Scooby Doo movie came out when I was a kid, but like it was kind of like in between the 90s, like where the movie came out when I was a little, like the live action movie is what I'm talking about, when I was a little too old, but the cartoon was on when I was too young.
But the
So
cartoons were reruns, and the
right,
movie itself was a throwback, nostalgic movie.
right.
Even then,
So
so
we're not necessarily talking about Scooby Doo today, but I just Lego's always struggled with this, and I don't know if nowadays like those kind of scary movies of the past where it was just like the idea of a vampire was what was scary, or the idea of Frankenstein was what was scary. Like
yeah,
if you look at like horror movies today and scary movies today, it's like Saw and and it's like Lego can't do that IP. That would be like a torture chamber would not probably go over well. Um, right.
um,
So I think it's kind of like you have to kind of I don't know, like I think of like Courage the Cowardly Dog. Even that show scared me as a kid. But like
that was a
I'm just trying to think of like what Lego could do to like kind of. I think Hidden Side was a good effort. I think it was just maybe have people interact with the Lego set, not an app. And I think Legos maybe realize that now, of like people buy Lego because it's not an app, right? Like I build Lego because I want screen time. I don't want screen time. I don't want to
right.
engage with my phone and that's why I don't even like doing Lego digital instructions, because like I just don't. I put my phone away from me when I build Lego,
Yeah,
and so like have the minifigures engage with the sets in a meaningful way, like have them transform, but then give them little stud shooters, and you can shoot the little transforming areas with these nets or with the stud shooters, so that like as the claws are coming out of the high school, like you've got a little target to shoot and send them back to the hidden side, whereas like the minifigure had a phone in their hand, and then
yeah.
you had a phone in your hand, and so it was just like there was no actual playability with the Lego set itself, right?
It's definitely like a failure to recognize that like Lego is a physical medium. I don't think, maybe not a full failure, but Lego's a physical medium, and so it should be engaged with physically, not digitally.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to exactly your point, that was probably the biggest challenge with this. So, I had a note here to talk about Wave 4 ideas because they never really came out with a Wave 4, but I think the narrative arc piece is sort of, I think there's a lot of potential there under that thought process of like American lore. But anything stand out to you of like what's missing or what could be added in this series?
What's missing? There's just focus is what's missing. There's just so much like because I was gonna say like I don't know, like a haunted forest, and it's like, oh, okay, well there was one kind of haunted forest thing maybe of like a park, but like it's like Newberry Park, meaning it feels like it's right by the subway, so it feels more like Central Park than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
so I think just some sort of like overall focus of I was gonna say maybe witches are missing, or maybe some of those more classic minifigures or classic monsters. I like Slender Man. I love that. Don't get me wrong, but like where's like the ghost werewolf or the ghost Frankenstein monster, like that. I think that sort of stuff would be really cool. There's like a ghost vampire in one of the sets, which is pretty cool. But then there's like this like the El Fuego like stunt stuff is it's just dumb. It's just
So like there was the JB submarine, right? And one of the things that I think Lego could have done was they could have done one of those old school divers with like the metal diving helmet, and they could have turned that guy into a ghost. And I think they have a figure for that.
yeah, or done like the creature from the Black Lagoon, right? Or the green swamp monster, like but in Ghost, right? Play off of some of those things, but like bring them up to the next generation. Don't just redo them. Give them this.
Yeah.
The submarine print is pretty cool. Actually, it's got this weird smiley face, and it's intriguing.
What? So I guess what did in your mind did the theme? I have a final thought here, and I got to make sure I can keep it in my head before it leaves the station. But what did the theme do well in your opinion?
Getting old sucks. Am I right?
Right.
What did the theme do well? I liked the haunted locations, and I
Okay.
would have liked more of that. There's a lot of play sets here, which I like. The
Yeah.
high school was cool. The shrimp shack was cool. I mean, when are we gonna get a Lego shrimp shack again?
Mm.
The subway station was pretty cool and compelling of a set itself, right? If you get rid of the transforming monster part, so I think they did some of the locations really well. I just think they're kind of all over the place. I think the lighthouse is really cool with the little haunted old lighthouse hermit guy. Yeah, I think some of that stuff's really cool.
Yeah. I don't know if we need to have a conversation about what should be re-released and necessarily what should be revisited because the theme is ultimately retired and it's freshly
They shouldn't
retired.
re-release any of this. They should do a fresh new theme with all my suggestions. It would sell way better. Lego hired me. Okay, thanks. Bye.
There you go. I want to comment. So what I think the theme did well was what stood out to me was seeing like the school bus and the fire truck and the shrimp boat. And I could just see what they were going after there. And I bought the fire truck to transform it into an actual fire truck. It's a project that is not finished because I haven't quite settled on how I want to do it. But it is definitely, I think, you see that when you see that set, and the school bus, like Lego came out with a city school set, I think a year or two later in like 2022, and the hidden side school bus is the closest thing to like a American Bluebird style like bus that we've ever seen. And it has like the flame yellowish orange and the big windows and like it just like I said, it really begs to be transformed into just like a regular bus
And the
for a
prison
city.
bar windows that just remind me of feeling in prison, going to school all the time as a kid. I mean, it just really,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. No, it just I thought there was just so much potential here of just and you know what, truthfully, it's expanding upon the sets themselves and building it into something different. But like I took the shrimp boat, I bought two of them and converted it into kind of one larger shrimp boat itself. Like it just there was a lot of things about this series that sort of begged to be revisited. And so I thought that was really unique. The one thing I want to comment on, and this is going to get really kind of out there, but have you noticed in Hidden Side that everyone getting haunted are generally like maybe more of like blue collar, I would say like low income workers, but like service kind of workers. There's like the rich high school kids with their cameras going after all of the ghosts, and then the ghosts end up being like
The
the
construction
janitor.
workers and the janitor and the
I'm like, I don't know if that's necessarily the story Lego's trying to tell, but that's kind of what ended up occurring. Food for thought. Maybe Lego needs to consider how they portray class and their Lego sets a little bit, but and socioeconomic gaps. Because to say that all of these people are haunted is, I don't know if that's. I mean, it's a statement, and
I think it's a little bit of a stretch of
I might
internet
be reading.
proportion. I mean, that's a stretch for internet standards. I think
No,
it's
the fact
I
that
think
all of the
it's
Disney movies are in the same universe is a stretch for internet
I
standards.
I
I think this is
I
more of an observation.
I think it's more of a product of the set location versus anything else. If that were truly the case, then the Central Park set would have like a homeless dude being transformed into a ghost. So I
I
don't
think they
think there
prefer.
was any statement here per se. There's also
No,
a scientist that gets transformed into a ghost, and you need a PhD to be a scientist. So,
you know what? Yeah, you've completely debunked my theory.
what are we building?
What are we building this week, Grinch? What do you got?
I built two sets. I built the Lion Dance Chinese New Year set
Okay.
because I've been collecting those, and I got one. Um, almost have them all now, and almost a little bit of a boring set. It's the one that came out a couple of years ago with all the little like lion puppet guys, and there's five there. I didn't realize it by looking at. I mean, it was like right there on the box art, but I didn't
Hmm.
realize it when I was looking at it. But there's five of them, so literally half the set is just building those things. So it gets a little repetitive,
Yeah.
There's a point where I was like, my wife was like watching The Office next to me, and I was just like, "Do you want to build one of these? They're really cool." Secretly hoping that she'll just build one for me because I've built three of them already, and I've got two more, and I just don't want to do another one. But it's still a cool, like, colorful set. They look really good on display.
Yeah.
So that's what I built, and then I also built the tall neck for
Ooh.
Horizon
Right.
Forbidden West. I was like, I wasn't gonna get that set, and then I was just staring at it, and I was like, this is gonna be one of those sets that I end up buying in 3 years for twice the price because I just was afraid to pull the trigger right now. Um, so that was an
Also,
awesome set
a
too.
little repetitive of a set, but a cool build
It
ultimately.
was repetitive, yeah, because you kind of build the base, and then it's like, let's build four of the same legs, and that's like half of the actual tall neck build is
Mhm.
the legs because it's so big. And then this I also just got Pirates of Barracuda Bay sealed, um,
Ooh.
which was one of those sets that I did regret not getting at the time.
Yeah.
So I did find a good deal on it in sealed. So that's on its way and should be here I think tomorrow. So I'll be
Nice.
building that this week.
Well, I am continuing my uh, goose egg streak with no builds this week. I didn't even buy any sets, so I
Bro,
have my eye.
do you even like Lego, bro?
This move has been a lot, so
You're
I
talking
do
to
have my.
somebody who's moved 4 times in 6 years, by the way. So tell me about it.
I hear you. I hear you. But sitting tight for 4 years is we've accumulated a lot, and the house needs a lot of prep. So, no, I have my eyes on some Speed Champion sets, so I'll probably pick up a couple of those here in the next few weeks. Maybe post house sale as a little celebration. But yeah, that's it. So,
Brick mail.
do we have any brick mail this week? Do we want to chat to?
Yeah, so comments on the Jurassic Park theme review that we did a couple of weeks ago. We had Calvin W2104 comment again. He is actually kind of commenting on his brick mail portion that we called out in that episode. He said he was crazy that I was the first person to say something. Happy I came across your stuff. He agreed with kind of what we said about the T-Rex Rampage. He was like, he was pissed that there was no Explorer included. Then I saw that set on display at the Lego store, and I promptly changed my stance on it and bought it. The size of the gate and the brick built T-Rex were too good in person. Such an amazing set. Um, and then he also commented on my mistake in my top five most or missing dinosaur sets where I called the Brachiosaurus a Brontosaurus, and he was like, "You're not alone, so thank you for coping with me and huffing some of that copium of calling it a Brontosaurus." But thank you, Calvin, again for listening. Yeah, so in that episode, we specifically talked about, or I was saying that I got that T Rex Rampage set kind of reluctantly. I knew I would get it regardless, but I was disappointed with it because it wasn't a UCS visitor center like the leaks had suggested. And
Mm-hmm.
then I saw it in person as well, and that's what Calvin was saying here is he was at the Lego store, saw it in person, was like, "Oh my gosh, take my money, Lego, please." Just as I was, it's a UCS T Rex. It's so cool, and how it kind of come full circle on that set now versus like when I first bought it, I was a little reluctant on it.
Yeah.
Um, and then we also had Jurassic Stud said, hoping Lego will make a UCS style visitor center. The one we got last year wasn't quite what I was hoping for. And yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, the one last year was good in its own right, as like a play scale one. Glad we
Yeah.
got it, don't get me wrong. But I think, like a Moss Eisley Cantina sized visitor center. It could still just be the facade. We don't need the entire interior. Just make the one that we got 3 times the size. Like a Mos Eisley. I'm saying Mos Eisley because I think that was like 2,500 pieces. And I think that would kind of be a good size of display piece where you could display it but still be kind of conscious of the display space that it takes to present it.
Yeah, I think it's challenging to think about Lego and just say, or it's easy, I suppose. It's not challenging. There is a challenge here, but I think it's easy to sit there and go like, we'll just make it like 3 times bigger. Like you see like any like Harry Potter or like Hogwarts Express or like the city trains, and it's like, or even like the modulars, it's like, this is wonderful, but like another 2 floors on this would be really cool. And I think Lego, like, they have to find a sweet spot. And so I hear like both you and Jurassic Studs, like a visitor center would be so cool. I just don't know like what the ROI for Lego would be on that one. Maybe I think there'd be a lot of people who would like it, but I don't know. I wonder if that one's kind of like for them. I'm sure they've considered it, but like
I'm sure they've got it built somewhere, to be honest.
Close, but not quite. You know what I mean? Like we're not quite sure this is gonna do what we think it's going to yet. So
yeah, I never know how well the Jurassic Park sets actually sell. There's a lot of like diehard fans of them.
Yeah.
But you do kind of like they kind of sit on sale quite a bit.
It's tough to tell. It's tough to
It's
tell.
really hard, especially now where Lego is more of like they have more of a high-low strategy where it's like, okay, hey, you guys this set's going to retail for $70, and then they give the retailers the ability to be competitive with one another and market $15 off, market $10 off, and like that's the strategy versus just like pricing it aggressively from the get-go and then not having a sale. It's more of like, let's price it a little bit, higher and let people kind of play around with the price as they see.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. And I think it presents sort of an interesting, challenge for Lego to think through. So I don't know. I think, well,
we'll save it for a conversation about scale someday.
I also thought like a UCS Venator wouldn't be a great idea, but then they did it. So
that'd be a great idea.
I mean, it looks cool. It's maybe a little more niche than I guess I figured, but I'm curious to see ultimately how well that one sells compared to like the Star Destroyer. So, but anyways, neither here nor there. Grinch, any final parting thoughts?
Nope.
Next week, Star Wars
episode 2.
Get excited. I'm excited already thinking about it. So, great. And that's a wrap of another episode of AFOLs Welcome. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you are listening to this show. If you would like to write the podcast, please email us at afolswelcome@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram at AFOLs Welcome. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.